So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our speaker who's going to be providing some brief summary remarks of some of the themes and comments that were heard today. My friend and firm colleague, Larry Bauer, who joined our firm after over 10 years at the Food and Drug Administration. He worked within the Rare Diseases Program within the Drug Center at FDA, not only working on drug development programs, but working directly with patient stakeholders in that time. And even before that, served many years as a research nurse at NIH. So comes as the perfect person to give some summary remarks. So please welcome to the stage Larry Bauer.
I'd like to reiterate some of what James said as far as thank you. I don't think there's anyone in the room who has not learned and have, their knowledge about pancreatitis expanded. Even amongst the patients, I'm sure that you guys have learned from hearing from each other. I had heard, studied pancreatitis when I was in school and stuff, but today has just been a total, shift in that of my understanding that can only come from us taking the time to be together for this, a half a day with doing nothing but listening. This is a very unusual and rare thing that we have done. And I hope that when we publish the Voice of the Patient report, it will be filled with direct quotes from all of you, with the knowledge, with the results from the polling. And this will be, this report will be in the public domain, available for anyone that wants to learn more about pancreatitis. So I think that what we have done here today is going to definitely move the field forward. So I was asked to give a summary. There's no way that I can, say everything that's been discussed today. So I'm just going to mention a few of the high points that I heard. Please forgive me if there was any high point that you thought was significant that I don't include in my remarks. So some of the takeaways for me was that pancreatitis is an incredibly complex disease, that it affects people in many different ways. There is not just one form of pancreatitis. The management is also extremely complex. As you heard, no single one of you has been managed in the same way, so we need qualified medical staff to be able to manage this condition and to work with patients. Even though there's many treatments available for symptoms, we still do not have any approved drugs for pancreatitis, which I think is a huge hole that needs to be worked on. Many of you talked about the diagnostic odyssey that you've been on. We heard of from some of the kids, or even from some of our older folks that are here, that they had symptoms early on that were just being written off as stomach aches, as diarrhea, as, that people, physicians are not catching this early. And then people that were told that they had gallstones, went through surgery, were not able to, it took years sometimes to get to a diagnosis. I think one of the main symptoms that everybody talked about was the pain, that the pain of pancreatitis is unlike any other pain. We've heard descriptions of stabbing knives, of acid, unlike anything else, that the pain scales are not measuring it accurately. The worst pain of your life, that it's like a heart attack. And I think it's also impressed me how that people are dealing with this all the time. So even if they're not having a flare, that sometimes people are having mild levels of symptoms. And treating the pain, people having to take narcotics, long-term use of even non-steroidal drugs has side effects. Gabapentin, clonidine, cannabis, Ambien, oxycodone, hydrocodone, all these drugs. And especially, it got my attention thinking about the use of narcotics in children, that I understand that that's what's required for this level of pain, but I also know that that's a serious impact on children's lives and their quality of life. So I do hope that that's an area of future research. We've heard a lot about the GI symptoms, chronic nausea and vomiting, going back and forth between diarrhea, constipation, adhesions in the bowel, just all kinds of situations. The fatigue is significant. Over and over again, we heard quality of life. What I want is quality of life. And I think we heard from a couple people that when you're in chronic fatigue, or if you have fatigue related to having surgery or to a flare, that this seriously impacts your lives. I was also impressed by the number of hospitalizations that people have gone through. It's unlike, there's very few illnesses where people are hospitalized as frequently and for some of the lengths of time. It's really almost unheard of. Let's see what else. I thought one of the quotes from Gracie was that she felt like a science experiment. I thought that really captured what each of your journeys, they actually sound like each of you is a science experiment, that you're working with your physicians and your healthcare teams to try to figure out how to approach this. We heard a lot about the total pancreatectomy procedure, the pluses and the minuses of that. One of the things that stuck in my mind was that, I think it might have been Rebecca said that it exchanges one problem for another, and that it leaves you with a unique anatomy post-op, so that if you start, post-operatively, if you develop additional symptoms, that it's going to take a specialist to know how to treat that, because you don't look the same inside anymore. There's issues with scar tissue and other things. So I think you're a courageous group. I appreciate everything that was said today. You all have such stamina and grace in this disease. And even like I remember, Eric, you said, I'm one of the lucky ones, but you still, you're still also one of the suffering ones. So I wish you all the best, and I hope that this meeting really moves the field of pancreatitis and research and treatments forward. So congratulations to you all. So to close the meeting, I would like to introduce Jane Holt. Jane was one of the co-founders of the National Pancreas Foundation. Jane, I also want to thank her. She stepped in. Someone couldn't attend, one of the panelists, and Jane stepped in to be a panelist at the last minute, so we really appreciated that. So, Jane.
Hi. So as Larry said, I'm one of the co-founders of the National Pancreas Foundation, but I also really want to introduce my other co-founder, Patter Bursick, who's sitting in the back of the room. And without Patter, this foundation wouldn't have happened. So we have to thank both of us equally. It was definitely a joint effort and a wonderful process. So, wow. It's very hard to conclude this meeting because this has just been an absolutely amazing meeting. But I want to say that from my bottom of my heart, I want to thank all of you for being here. I know how hard it is, as James said, how hard it is to tell our stories. And when I started to write my story, I had to think back 32 years. And suddenly, all the things that had happened started popping into my head. I knew I had had a tough time, but I had pushed away a lot of the details. I would suddenly remember being in an emergency room rolled up in a ball because my pain was so bad, or driving to pick up my kids at school and having to stop and vomit. It was very hard for all of us to write this story. And it was even harder for all of us to come and tell the world about it. But I have to say that each and every one of us did it for one reason. We all want something to happen that will change the treatment of patients with pancreatitis. We all want a better life for all of these patients. And we're hoping that we're able to help the FDA today, and that we hope we're able to let you understand more about this disease, and that it will help you in the future, helping us to get a change. And we did this as a partnership. Without Mission Cure, Rebecca's Wish, and the FCS Foundation, who have brought in patients and have given us assistance and guidance along the way, having them join the cause has been very important to all of us. And we want to thank all of the patients who have spent all their time on the webinar and answering our questions, because everything that you have done is also just as important as what we are doing here. And please listen to James, and if you have thoughts or questions or things that you want to add to it, please, you are going to give us an email address, right? Or some place to respond? Okay, well, we're going to get information on how to respond back, so please do that. So in ending, again, I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank James and Larry for all of their help. And of course, Sockpole, you did an amazing job, and the meeting has been fantastic. So thanks, everybody.